I am going 6-0 in the division because the rest of the division sucks.
This is the best division in football, Tori. Take that step back. We are seeing the true quarterback that he really is, which he is not a very good quarterback.
Welcome to the Man Now, where we taking over. It's time to give you them facts. Won't miss a game or two, cause we here for you and we reporting all of them stats. We coming to you live to keep you updated. Broadcast across the country, we the fan favorites. Break the volume to the max and don't nobody touch it. We crossing topics off the list, addressing every subject. So if you ain't got a clue, then you can tune in and give it 24 hours and we back again. Breaking news, new scoops, we the top dogs. From the fields to the courts, we report it all. Buzzer beat us through your speakers, we the ones to call. Trust us for the news if it's got a ball. Giving you the top stories cause we love the turf. Tell a friend to tune in and where you heard it first. Yeah, you're listening to the Man Now. We taking over, it's time to give you them stats. Hey, you listen to the Man Now. Miss a game or two cause we reporting all of them facts. Hey, you listen to the Man Now. We taking over, it's time to give you them facts. Turn the speakers up a little loud. Miss a game or two cause we reporting all of them stats. Cause you listen to the Man Now.
And what is up, Man Hour Nation? Welcome to Fantasy Football Wednesday, where we answer all your fantasy questions right here live at youtube.com/Man Hour every Wednesday, 8 p.m. East Coast time, 7 p.m. Central time, with the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Tori Anderson. That's a big MR, Mr. That is like Mr. Rogers, Mr. Tori Anderson. What's going on, Tori?
I mean, it's a beautiful week to be me. I'm 3-0 in one league. I'm 1 point off of being the top scoring league or the top scorer in that league. Our league, I'm 2-1 and the top scoring team in that league. So I must be doing something right. I must know what I'm talking about a little bit here and there.
Yeah, and who is your one loss to? I'm just kind of curious.
That would be to the one and only Mr. Buck Nasty.
Yeah.
Who had an amazing week one. I thought I had that game wrapped up. I'm like, I scored 140 points. I'm good. You drop 188 burger on me. I'm like, whoa.
And then I have us break 100 cents. So it is what it is, right? It is what it is. So, guys, it is Fantasy Football Wednesday. Tori's here to answer all your fantasy football questions that you might have. Of course, we have some waiver wire stuff to talk about. We are going to talk about some busts, some must-haves, and, of course, we got questions from the Fantasy Football Discussion Group as well. So, Tori, are you ready to get started, brother?
I am ready. Let's do this. I just realized this might be the first time I've ever been on the show and on camera without a hat on.
And, Mike, you are sexy, too.
I am.
Jeez.
New haircut. Who this?
Who that? Who that over there? Who that over there? Speaking of who that over there, there are some people out there, Tori, that are quickly becoming must-start players in the Fantasy Football League. And week 4, Tori, give me some players that you must start this week.
So, and we kind of talked about this a little bit pre-show here. There's a team that we're going to have to kind of start going, these guys might be for real. And no, it's not the Miami Dolphins. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence is starting to become the quarterback that everybody thought he was going to be. He now is taking that step forward. Granted, they played against a very banged up Chargers team, but they still dropped 38 on that team. That's still a very good Chargers defense that did lose Bosa. However, still, they dropped 38. This is not your typical Jacksonville Jaguars team. This is a team that is now all of a sudden starting to make us go, we're going to have to take these guys seriously. Trevor Lawrence, slowly and quietly, is probably available in a lot of leagues because who in the right mind was like, yeah, Jacksonville's going to be an offensive juggernaut? Nobody.
Yeah.
They're turning into that, though. And Trevor Lawrence is slowly becoming a quarterback that if he's not picked up, you might want to pick him up and stash him. Keep an eye on him. Maybe at this point, maybe he's a bye week option, depending on what your quarterback situation looks like. But he's starting to become like somebody that like I might pick him up and put him into the game because he's putting up points and he's putting up a lot. And staying in that same theme, I was a huge fan of Travis Etienne this year. Like, I'm like, Etienne's going to come in and bust out. Guess what? It has become Mr. Robinson's neighborhood in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
One of my gems I got in the late rounds too, James Robinson for the Jacksonville Jaguars right now is showing out, especially in the PPR league. He is showing that he's not giving up that lead in the backfield. He may not be listed as the starter, but he is sure getting the catches and the carries and producing at a bigger rate now than Travis Etienne. He is right now, if you're not starting him, you need to be starting him. And again, I talked to Buck right before this. I made a trade right before we went on the air in my one league, and I actually told the guy, I said, you can have any of my running backs. So in that league, we can't trade first round picks. I said, except for Najee Harris. And I was just like, don't pick James Robinson. Don't pick James Robinson. Don't pick James Robinson. And he's like, I'll do Cordarrell Patterson for Amari Cooper. I'm like, deal, done. I will do that all day long. He did try to get me to take a bite on Deontay Johnson. I'm like, nope, bigger upside on Amari Cooper, just because he's doing things with a crappy quarterback that once Deshaun gets done with his suspension, will probably do even better, which just in time for the playoffs could be a steal for me on that one. Again, I take a hit losing Cordarrell Patterson just because of all the receptions and stuff he gets out of the backfield. He is a solid back. But again, I always look towards the future. I've had Brian Robinson stashed on my bench. Again, I talked about it last week. I'm going to talk about it again this week. If you have not, and he is available, he comes back off of IR next week. If you watch the pregame drills and everything else that he was doing already last week, he's ready to go. He will probably step in for the Redskins and be an immediate impact player for them.
Yeah, as a Gibson fantasy owner, I hope that is not the case. But you are telling me that I need to pick up Trevor Lawrence right now, right? If he is available in our league, which he is, pick him up, right?
He absolutely. He again, week in and week out, all of a sudden he's starting to show who he is. I follow a couple of different things, but one of them is NFL memes, and it's funny, but it's semi-accurate. Was there was a meme that said Trevor Lawrence, if he never had Urban Meyer as his coach his first year, and it actually had a picture of Peyton Manning underneath it.
Right.
So, which side note, I don't know if I posted it or not. With his third victory, Doug Peterson is now the fifth winningest coach in the Jacksonville Jaguars history, tied with Urban Meyer.
Isn't that crazy just to think, though? I mean, they've been around since, 96, and they've already had 5 or 6 new head coaches. That's actually probably more than that.
That's
yeah.
insane. The fact that you're in the top 5 with 3 wins says something.
Yeah. So our man Alpha Rob is in the chat. He says, "What's up, guys? What's up, Alpha Rob? Glad to see you to tune in tonight." He says a giant Jags running game looks good. So let me ask you this question, Tori. Let's go off script a little bit here. Since the Jacksonville Jaguars backup running back is doing so well, and you thought Travis Etienne was going to have a coming out party, do you think that running back is still going to be successful, or should I still keep Etienne on my bench just in case, something happens?
Again, we talk about it almost every week, the handcuff. Injuries happen. Things happen. Absolutely. Etienne is definitely worthy of a roster spot on your team right now still. Because, again, it's not like he's not playing at all. It's not like James Robinson. They're doing pretty much a 50-50 split. But where Robinson gets more of the hype is he's getting more of the catches out of the backfield, which is obviously in a PPR league. That's huge because that's just point after point after point that you're getting, where Etienne's still more just kind of, rushing the ball, and that's about it. So, yeah, absolutely keep Etienne on your roster.
Do you think he is ever going to develop as that back that starts catching the balls like out of the backfield, or do you think he is just more of like a north and south type of guy?
I think he has it in him because he did it at Clemson. He was an out of the backfield running back there for whatever reason. I don't know if it's just scheme, fit, whatever. Obviously, different systems, players do different things. And right now, the system is kind of geared a little bit more towards James Robinson, where maybe Doug Peterson doesn't feel as comfortable with Etienne in some of those spots. So he puts somebody that's been in around into those spots instead. I'm not saying that it'll never happen, but it might not, and it could. And again, injuries do happen. Coaches, again, we'll talk about confidence in their players. And as he gets confidence in that offense, Doug Peterson's probably going to give him a little bit more of a workload.
Right. And we also need to take in perspective, this is technically Travis Etienne's rookie year. Yes, he was rookie last year, but he didn't play a single snap last year. Again, and it's everybody's first year of Doug Peterson's offense. Right.
Again, it's a version of the West Coast offense, which is always been known as a very, very difficult offense to pick up and master.
Yeah, like the West Coast offense in general is very hard to pick up. Look at Joe Montana and Steve Young, right? It took them a little while to really master that skill. So are there any other players that you're kind of eyeballing and of like becoming must-start players?
Oh. So there's starting to become a certain wide receiver. And again, I'm going to get called Homer.
First of all, I love how you were rubbing your G as
Right.
like, I feel exactly know which way you're going. You're like, I'm going to be called a Homer.
I already know it, but you kind of saw his coming out party last week. Romeo Dobbs, he's gaining Aaron's confidence. He went to him 8 times, or actually, I think he went to him 10 times. He had 8 catches, 71 yards, and a score. That bodes well for a rookie, especially in that offense where they usually don't throw to the rookies. Obviously, Aaron really doesn't have much of a choice this year because Sammy Watkins is out. But right now, he's making the case to be that number 2 wide receiver that stretches the field, and they're doing a lot of different Debo type things with Romeo Dobbs right now in that offense. Allen Lazard's going to be the number 1. Just because he's the route runner, he's not the speediest guy in the world. However, you still need somebody to stretch the field. When MVS left for Kansas City, that opened up the spot. Dobbs is taking that spot. Dobbs has made his claim since the preseason that he wants to be a force to be reckoned with. Christian Watson still dealing with a case of drops, and now he aggravated his hamstring, so he didn't even play last week. For every snap that Dobbs gets to play, that's one less snap that Watson's going to have with Rodgers to develop that rapport. This year, right now, Romeo Dobbs will probably be that number 2 receiver with Cobb in the slot and Lazard at the number 1. If you have not picked him up, or if he's available, go after him. You need to go after him. He's going to be a must start. That could be come playoff time for your season. That's 13 games into his season, 14 games into his season. He's going to be a lot more comfortable. That's going to be huge, and it's going to pay dividends for you.
Yeah, so you always got to look at the end game when you're drafting these young players. And while you were talking, and I did some research, Tori, in the CBS fantasy football leagues, over 85% of the leagues do not have him drafted. So he definitely is probably available in most of your leagues. So Tori's tell you guys to pick him up, and he is 3-0 in his league. So listen to the man. He knows what he's talking about. Alpha Rob says, surprise, surprise, surprise. Sammy Watkins out again.
Right? I mean, he made it 3 games, and nobody knows what happened. He was fine after the game in week 2.
Didn't he tear his ACL?
No, because he's only out. They're only talking 4 to 6 weeks.
Oh, I thought I saw something where he tore his ACL or something.
It wouldn't shock me. He probably tripped over an extension cord or something.
Jeez. Savage. Hey, he was good in Kansas City for the 5 games that he played in 8 years.
And that's it. That's always been the knock. Can't stay healthy and is good in short stretches.
Yeah. So speaking of good short stretches, Tori, it is Wednesday. Fantasy Football Wednesday. We're here every Wednesday here at 8 p.m. East Coast time. Talk with my man, Tori Anderson, at _Tori. You can join our Facebook discussion group, Fantasy Football Discussion. Link is in the description. Waiver Wire Wednesday, Tori. Who were you getting?
I'm pretty sure everybody and their brother's putting in for this player at this point. But with Montgomery out in Chicago, you better be looking at Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert put on a nice little show, and I'm going to almost guarantee he's available in most leagues because most people weren't like, who's going to be a really good running back this year? Khalil Herbert, because nobody said that. I mean, most people probably were like, with Montgomery.
Yeah.
I was probably a little bit more optimistic, but it looks like he's going to miss some time. You should be putting in a claim to pick up Khalil Herbert. I have one in. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get him because I am last in line to get any kind of transaction. So I put in a backup claim for the Vikings defense because I don't like the Bills matchup this weekend. So absolutely, Khalil Herbert, if you can get him, go get him now.
So I did some more research there per CBS. 99% of the leagues do not have Khalil Herbert picked up.
I guarantee after transactions get done this week, it's going to be available in 60% of the leagues.
Yeah. So mean, and just on the flip side of that, the Chicago Bears are only throwing the ball 11 to 12 times a game. So they're running the ball, right? He's going to get his touches, and maybe score you 15, 16, 18 points. Like, you never know.
And he's putting up the numbers to back it up. I mean, there's literally no reason not to, just because their offensive line cannot pass block for whatever reason. They are completely suspect, and that's why they're not throwing the ball a ton. I mean, you even saw it when, last weekend in the Green Bay game, they completely abandoned the pass.
Yeah,
Because like in the last 2 weeks, I think Fields has got like 24 pass attempts or something like that.
He was 9 for 11 versus the whatever team they played second. I can't think of it. Was it the Saints? Maybe I can't remember.
Packers. They played the Packers
or the Packers, and then last week he only threw 12 times. So
so 23. Yeah, so he's got 23 attempts in 2 weeks. If that tells you anything about where they feel their pass blocking is, you obviously should be picking up Khalil Herbert, just especially since Montgomery's probably going to miss a couple of weeks. And speaking of players that are banged up and a little bit hurt, Alvin Kamara is a little banged up right now too. You should be, if Mark Ingram is available, he's probably not going to be as readily available in most leagues. Probably, I would say he's probably about 50% of the leagues at this point. But still, Kamara's been banged up. Ingram is a great running back when he's not the feature back. Like if he is a split in time back like that, like when they were first together, he was amazing in that role. They fit it well. They could spell each other. Guess what? Nobody ever gets wore out then. And with Kamara being a little bit banged up, absolutely. Like, you should be looking at Mark Ingram. I know I never really looked at Mark Ingram until I'm like, old, getting a little long in the tooth, getting a little bit older. Not real sure how he's going to do. And what does he do last weekend? He was a banger last weekend.
Yeah,
in a losing effort, because apparently they decided to play the final 3 minutes of the game.
Right. So, fun fact is Ingram is the only player to wear 3 different numbers on the same team. Did you know that?
Really?
Yep. Fun fact.
Fun fact.
So, Buddy 75P comes with the question here, Tori. He says, Singletary, Pierce, or Akers at flex, who should he start?
Oh. Singletary, Pierce, and who?
Akers, Cam Akers.
Yeah, not Cam Akers. For whatever reason, he's in Sean McVay's doghouse because Darrell Henderson has been the number one back there, which is one of the most shocking things to happen this season so far, because I thought Cam Akers would have a big year.
Yeah, me too.
So Cam Akers, nope. At this point, Pierce. I know that Lovie Smith had said Rex Burkhead's my lead back. Did you watch Damien Pierce the last 2 weeks? I still have. Again, the one reason I made a trade for a wide receiver is because I have Damien Pierce on my bench. So, and I have Brian Robinson getting ready to come back. So I made a trade because Keenan Allen's banged up. I want to make sure my wide receiver core is all taken care of. But yeah, I would probably go with Damien Pierce. He's got the higher upside right now, even over Singletary, just because you got a bunch of different factors for Singletary in Buffalo.
So with that being said, you always talk about the long-term game here. Long-term game. Who is going to be your guy like come playoff time? Is going to be Singletary, Pierce, or Cam Akers?
I would go with Pierce.
Okay.
Houston's another team that like we all thought would just get rolled over by. They're showing they got some grit.
Yeah,
got a little fight in them. And they're not going to be as terrible as we thought they were going to be. They've quietly pieced together a pretty good offensive line. Davis Mills quietly put together a strong start to the season, and nobody's talking about it. They have some nice little weapons there that nobody's ever heard of. About the only people you've ever heard of on the offensive side there right now, if you're a fantasy football player, is probably Damien Pierce, because that's about the only person that was worthy of a spot. Now you're starting like, well, maybe I would stash Davis Mills on the bench. You got Nico Collins who's starting to come on there in Houston. So there's a couple of quiet pieces there. Brandon Cooks hasn't made quite the headlines that I thought he would, but he's still going to be their deep threat. But even his fantasy value is limited as well. But again, they're a team to keep an eye on some of those players come later in the year. Damien Pierce, I think, though, by the end of the year, as he gets more acclimated to that offense, it is going to probably end up being their lead back and being a pretty dominant force.
All right, so Damien Pierce, Buddy says 75P. Tori says to start him. So, Tori, let me take this one step further. So, clearly he has 3 running backs on his roster. You said Cam Akers is in the doghouse, and Singletary you don't have a lot of faith in. Do you possibly move those guys, kind of sell them while their value's still somewhat high, like Singletary's stock is still kind of high a little bit. They always say buy low, sell high right now.
Right.
Do you sell any of those guys?
I do. If the right deal comes along, like, again, I talked about it last week too. Sometimes you can sell to, there's a sucker born every minute. You can sell to homers.
Me.
And you can sell to people that are stuck on names. Those are two of the biggest things you can do in fantasy football. Like, there is somebody, again, like, that's like stuck on whatever player. There is somebody that's a Buffalo Bills fan in one of those leagues that's like, I really wish I had Singletary on my team. Man, I missed out on him. Da, da, da. And they will overpay to get him on your team. They will offer you some stupid, ridiculous deal. Like, I don't know. It's going to be a little overboard here, but like, I'll give you Jonathan Taylor for Singletary. Yeah, you're going to take that deal. Like, there's a sucker born every minute when it comes to that stuff. Right. And people will take advantage of that. There's somebody out there that's like, Cam Akers is still going to be the lead back, and at this point, much like the NFL, some fantasy owners go into desperation mode at this point. Like, I need to do something to try to turn this thing around because they are 0-3. Yep. And somebody might overpay again for a Cam Akers or somebody like that. Absolutely 110%. Play that name, play that stuff up, and try to get those. Like, again, subconsciously, like, I made my trade. I told him I wanted CeeDee Lamb originally, and he was kind of like considering. He said, and he came down to say, well, I'll give you Amari Cooper. And like I said, I thought he was going to go for James Robinson, but he came down to Cordarrell Patterson even for me. And I'm like, deal, because actually Cooper was the player I wanted from the get-go.
Yeah, so I actually have Cam Akers on my bench right now. I'm secretly kind of hanging on to him. Hopefully he kind of has a coming out party. But
and what's your record?
In this particular league, I am 0-3. So, yeah, sucker born every minute. I'm hanging on, hoping Cam Akers will kind of pull through.
It's not going to happen, not going to happen, my friend.
Yeah.
As much as you wanted to, the only way it's happening is if Darrell Henderson gets hurt.
Yeah.
Which again,
yeah,
I'm all about the handcuff at that point.
Right. I mean, you never know. So Singletary and Cam Akers, if you guys have an opportunity to move them is what Tori says. Another question comes up on the board here, Tori. This is from our Fantasy Football Discussion Facebook group here. He says, should I drop Breece Hall or Stevenson? Who should he drop?
So my gut's going to tell me to drop Stevenson, even though he did score. I actually just dropped him in our league. Granted, we're only in an 8-person league, so I picked up Chase Edmonds, which overall will probably be good. Again, it depends how many people are in your league. Right. I am still very high on Breece Hall, even though Michael Carter has played very well for the Jets the last 2 weeks. I am still very hopeful about Breece Hall. If anything, I think they go into kind of a dual role where Breece Hall actually busted one and looked and flashed really well last weekend. So I would say if you're going to ditch somebody, Stevenson, just because it's the Patriots. Yeah. They play musical running backs and will go trot out 3 or 4, different types of running backs. Belichick's a master that way of he learns what that team's weakness is for the running back, and that's who he plays that week. It's literally a gamble every week with the Patriots running back. So I would say your safer bet would be keep Breece Hall on your team because he's going to get guaranteed playing time.
So also on the flip side of that coin, Zach Wilson does come back this week. He is listed day to day, but he is scheduled to start Sunday first versus the Jets. And I don't know how much throwing he is going to do right off the bat. Are they going to ease him into it, or are they going to run the ball, or so definitely a chance to get some cheap points there, right?
Absolutely, because it's been a year since I could say this. Zach is trash.
I was waiting on that. I was waiting on Zach is trash.
Anybody who has known me has known that I have been on the Zach Wilson is not a good quarterback train since before he was drafted. And I called it. I rescinded my thing on Mac because at first it was Mac and Zach are trash, but then Mac Jones shut me up, and I will own that all day long. Yep. But Zach Wilson has been the quarterback exactly who I thought he would be.
So another Facebook question comes out here to Tori. You were just speaking about your Green Bay Packer wide receiver there in Dobbs, but Juan asks, should I drop Elijah Moore or Dobbs? Or Daubs. How do you say his name?
It's Dobbs.
Dobbs.
It's pronounced Dobbs. No, I think he's actually I think it's DJ Moore.
Oh, DJ Moore. That's right. Yep.
DJ
Moore. Yep.
It was DJ Moore. Because I told him Dobbs. I will say Dobbs all day long, just because who would you rather have throwing you the ball? Aaron Rodgers or Baker Mayfield?
Right.
So at that point, again, there's too many other choices. Like, you still got Robbie Anderson, who's been kind of a disappointment in Carolina so far this year.
Right.
Probably because he was so anti-Baker Mayfield. He traded there. Baker's like, screw you, I ain't throwing you the ball. But the higher upside, again, is Dobbs. Dobbs is a candidate to potentially win Offensive Rookie of the Year if he keeps gaining Aaron's trust. Again, who would you rather have throwing you the ball? A Hall of Fame quarterback or a former first overall pick that's borderline bust or average quarterback? Who's probably who am I going to trust more?
Aaron freaking Rodgers.
Aaron freaking Rodgers.
Pat that G. There you go. All right, so moving on to the next topic of the night here, Tori. It is fantasy fact or fiction. So I have a list of 5 players here that have kind of shined so far this season, and I want you to tell me if they're going to continue to shine or if it's just kind of a fool's gold type of situation here. The very first player that I have coming up here is Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is averaging 22.2 points per game, fantasy football-wise. Fact or fiction, he is a diamond this season or a rough?
Fiction all the way. He was averaging 31.2 points a game prior to this last week, and his average took a 9-point dip. You saw what happened now when he goes up against a very solid defense. He got lit up. And again, I've always been on the Carson Wentz is overrated train from the get-go. I know that you and BC have had many heated debates about Carson Wentz on the show. So, I am going to say absolutely he is fiction. Do I wish he was fact? Yes, because they have really good receivers. They have, Scary Terry. They've got Curtis Samuel. They've got Logan Thomas at tight end. They've got, Deami Brown, I think, that they drafted last year out of Baylor. And then they have Jahan Dotson too. Like, they go 3 or 4 legit deep at receiver in Washington, but I just don't. Carson Wentz is not going to be that quarterback. He had one good year where he should have won the MVP that year if he not gotten hurt. But it was obviously at the end of the day, it was Nick Foles that took them to the Super Bowl. It was not Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz has not been the same quarterback since then. I'm going to go fiction on him all day long. Is he good for maybe spot starts in fantasy football? Yeah. If he's playing a really terrible defense, he's going to carve him up. But am I going to put him up against some of the top 5 or top 10 defenses in the league? No, not at all.
Yeah, and this year in this week, they are playing a top defense in the Dallas Cowboys. So definitely get rid of him 100%. So the next fact or fiction here, Tori, Amon St. Brown, the Detroit Lions wide receiver, averaging 16.7 points a game. I believe at one point he has had a touchdown in 9 straight games. He leads the Detroit Lions with that streak there. So take that into perspective. How is he going to do the rest of the year?
I'm going to go fact. And again, I said this all before the season, and watching the game last week. What is it? Detroit scored a touchdown in 18 or 19 straight quarters now.
Yeah.
That's a fact that nobody really even probably realized. I will say I am one of them that didn't realize that. I'm going to go with fact, though, because I'm going to stick to my guns to what I said prior to the season, too, that Jared Goff could have a Jared Goff type season and turn that offense into something special. And I said they have a bunch of receivers you've never heard of, and they're quietly really good. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be a fact. I know he's a little banged up right now. We'll see how much he actually plays this week, or if they even sit him this week. But again, he is going to be a top 10, maybe even top 5 fantasy football receiver in the coming years. He'll probably be a top 10 this year. And I'm even saying next year he could end up being a top 5 quarterback or wide receiver.
Yeah, and I'll also take this into perspective as well. The Detroit Lions are the 3rd highest average offense this season, points wise. So they're definitely putting up some numbers on fantasy and in real life. So Tori, this one, we have kind of talked about them a little bit. We talked about their offensive side of the ball, but the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, they are quietly the highest scoring fantasy football defense week in and week out. They're averaging 12.2 points per week. Fact or fiction?
I'm going to go fiction on them. It's simply because, again, it's a very young defense. It has a defense that has a lot to learn. There's going to come weeks so that they take their lumps. It may not be this year. It could be next year that we're talking about them, much like, what was it, like 4 or 5 years ago when they went on the free agent spending spree and like signed like every defensive stud that was out there. Yeah. And they were like a top 3 unit. They're doing it a little differently now. It's drafted. It's mostly homegrown talent. And they're showing why they're going to end up being a force to be reckoned with right now early in the season. But again, temper expectations. I don't think they're going to be like amazing all through the year. They're going to take lumps. There's going to be breakdowns and stuff like that. Again, it's a young defense. There's going to be breakdowns that happen, and they're going to end up getting burned by them. But again, that's how you get better. In loss, you gain experience.
Yeah, so they are averaging 12.2 points per week here. And also the flip side of the coin, the oldest person on that defensive side of the ball, Tori, 25 years old.
Yeah.
Take that into perspective. They are
very young,
very young, and
very young.
Be very, very good for a long time. Might have to get me a Jacksonville Jaguars jersey, Josh Allen. I love me some Josh Allen.
Or a Tim Tebow jersey.
Yeah, right, Joey? Where you at?
Where's Joey at?
Where's Joey at? So the next person on the Fact or Fiction here, Amari Cooper. You just traded for Amari Cooper here, Corey, so I kind of know where you're going to go with this answer, but he's quietly having a pretty good season. He's averaging 11.3 points per game. Fact or fiction for Amari Cooper?
I mean, do we really even have to ask this? I'm going to go with fact. I think, again, the upside, he's doing this with Jacoby Brissett as his quarterback. And it's only going to get better once Deshaun gets there. I mean, it's going to take a game or two for Deshaun to knock the rust off. And hopefully they have the same rapport, but it's still Amari Cooper. He's the number 1 option there. He has taken away targets from who I thought was going to be a breakout this year with Donovan Peoples-Jones, who hasn't really done anything yet this year. Right. But yeah, absolutely fact that Amari Cooper is going to be there. He's the number 1 option. Again, it's an offense that is quietly talented, but nobody talks about. They have Chubb, they have Kareem Hunt. Everybody knows those names and people will play them. But you don't think of Cleveland and go offensive juggernaut. It just doesn't happen. But they quietly do have a lot of weapons. Yeah. Njoku is coming on. He's got the more prominent role for this year. You do have Donovan Peoples-Jones. You have Amari Cooper. This is a team with a lot of weapons that just needs their quarterback to come back and not get happy endings.
Well, let me ask you that question here, just because, there are certain times when quarterbacks have a better rapport with said wide receiver. Possibly does Deshaun Watson have a better rapport with Jonathan Peoples-Jones than Amari Cooper?
I mean, it's possible. It could very well happen. It all depends on what happens when he's allowed to practice with the team again.
Which is this week, isn't it? I do believe.
No, he can't be around the team till his suspension's up.
I thought he could come back October 1st to become meetings and stuff like that, and then practice.
Maybe
mid-October, because his first game is like November 11th or something like that.
Yeah. So he got suspended 11 games, so he can come back week 12.
Yeah,
because they play the Texans that week.
Imagine that.
Weird how that worked.
Your bye week just happened to fall the week that you can come back and practice. You have 2 weeks of practice, whatever. Right.
And you play your former team. Yeah.
Hello, TV ratings.
Yeah, right? No, They decided it was 11 games. 11 games was appropriate.
Yeah.
No,
Good
you
job,
actually
NFL.
games,
Good job,
but-
NFL.
Yeah, but
Go ahead. Sorry.
fact. He is fact. Amari Cooper's going to do Amari Cooper things. And
Is that
the
show
thing
up
that
on the home games and disappear on the road games? Is that Amari
Not-
Cooper things?
I don't think so.
We did in Dallas.
I mean, but in Dallas too, he actually had other receivers that he had to compete with too. He had Gallup, he had CeeDee Lamb and stuff like that. Like he was actually competing for catches there. He's not in Cleveland. It's him and Donovan Peoples-Jones and Njoku.
Yeah.
So, a lot less hands to go around to get targets. And again, CeeDee Lamb kind of is their darling receiver now. So, they were going to feed him no matter what. So that kind of put Cooper into that second spot. So I think Cooper's still a number one receiver in this league, and he's showing off so far. At least the last 2 weeks he has. First week 1 he had a really quiet week.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, meh. But then the last 2 weeks he's kind of showing out. So
Right. All right. So the last person that I have on my list here, let's travel out west. Gino Smith, quietly getting 14.7 points per game. He had a pretty costly interception to lose their game, but we're talking about fantasy points here. Factor fiction for Gino Smith.
I got to go fiction on him. I have to. It's Gino Smith. He was a second round pick and got ran out of New York. Granted, I mean, it was New York, and they were not a good football team, and they had no offensive line, and they basically had no intentions of becoming a good football team while Gino was there. But even with that, like he had opportunities with the Giants as well too when Daniel Jones was struggling, and he didn't really take full advantage of that either. So I'm going to go fiction with him just because at this point it's probably a little bit more scheme fit for him. As soon as they get a little bit more tape on him, they're going to figure him out, and he's not exactly the type of quarterback that's going to adjust. So they may have written him off and he didn't write back, but I'm writing him off.
Yeah. Get him out of town. So would you pick up Drew Lock then? Or no Seattle Seahawks? Or
I would stay away from it just because that has the potential to become a revolving door of, well, Gino struggled, so let's go with Drew. Oh, well, now Drew's struggling. Let's go back to Gino. Let's alternate series with him. It has the recipe for disaster. I honestly feel bad for DK and Tyler Lockett because, I mean, you have two of the best receivers in the NFL, and you got nobody to throw them the ball. I mean, it's like I said, and Gino's playing off that right now because he does have two of the best receivers in the league.
Yeah. You are 100% correct on that, even though I just dropped DK Metcalf. So now he's going to score like 28 points like this week, right?
I mean, he had a decent week last week.
Yeah, I think he scored 17 points last week, maybe. I'm not for sure. But,
yeah, it depends on your league scoring because I think in our league, like he put up 13, which is pretty good for a receiver.
Yeah. All righty, guys. So that's going to be it for Fantasy Football Wednesday. Every Wednesday, Tori is here with us answering your fantasy football questions. If you want to get at him, the link is in the description. Fantasy Football Discussion Group in the Facebook page there, or you can hit him up on Twitter at _Tori. Tori, any closing thoughts before we head out, my man?
Follow me on Twitter. Ask me questions on Twitter. As you said, we are on the Fantasy Football Discussion website or on the Facebook page. Ask questions there. I'm here to help you win. Like Jerry Maguire, help me help you.
There you go.
Help me help you.
Show me the
That's
money.
what I'm here for.
And
that's what I want to do. Show you the money at the end of the year.
Show me the money, Jerry. Show me the
I
money.
just asked, when you win your league because you listen to me, I get 50% of the winnings, right?
There you go.
That's the way it works.
Because this is free advice. Nowhere else you get free great advice like this. All right, Tori.
There's no such thing as a free lunch.
We'll see you next week, man.
All right. Have a good week.